C4, highly explosive. Timer, used as a receiver. Pencil detonator. Charger, it's used by convicts to hide money and drugs. They stick it in their body, they tuck it up their rectum. You put them all together, you got a bomb. That's what you have in your right now.
The movie kicks off in Mexico City, an unforgiving, godless place where every hour a person is kidnapped. With cartels and kidnappers ruling the streets, wealthy people are constantly at risk of abduction. To protect themselves, they hire bodyguards and get ransom insurance policies. Ex-CIA operative and expert assassin John Creasy is headed to Mexico City to meet his old military friend Rayburn. Rayburn runs a security team that escorts people around, and he's enjoying life in Mexico with his Latina wife. But Creasy's not doing so well. He seems worn out and drinks too much, unable to let go of the guilt from his troubled past.
You think God will forgive us for what we've done?
When Rayburn finds out Creasy has been out of work for a while, he sees a chance to help him. His friend Ramos, the owner of a struggling auto manufacturing plant, asked him to find a reliable bodyguard for his daughter, a job Creasy is strikingly reluctant to take, bringing up a zillion excuses to turn it down. He thinks he's not people's person, and his drinking problem doesn't help either. However, after all the talking, Rayburn somehow convinces Creasy to accept the job. In the next scene, we see Ramos being cunningly persuaded by his lawyer, Jordan Kalfas, that hiring a bodyguard for his daughter is essential to renew their ransom insurance policy. Ransom insurance is popular among the rich in case of kidnapping, but for it to be valid, they must have a bodyguard. Ramos then starts interviewing the cleaned-up and fresh-out-of-water Creasy and is impressed by his background. 16 years of military service and extensive experience in counterterrorism. Despite Creasy's drinking issues, Ramos decides to give him a chance, but warning him to keep it low-key, especially around his wife. When they get to Ramos's fancy mansion, Lisa, the stunning American wife of his, enters the scene. She doesn't even bother looking at Creasy's resume once she learns he's also an American. Then she goes ahead and offers him a drink, and Creasy wastes no time in showing everyone he's a fan of the bottle.
Yes, Jack and water be good.
Lisa's quick trust in Creasy is evident when she asks Pita to guide him to his room. Even though Creasy remains poker-faced as she gives him a tour, Pita is a real people person as she tries to be friendly and get to know him. Later on, we see Pita getting even more fond of Creasy, telling her mom he looks like a big sad bear. She decides to name her little doll after him, calling it Creasy Bear. The next morning, we see Creasy on duty, driving Pita to school. But the talkative girl just won't quit chatting, and it's starting to get on Creasy's nerves. When they arrive at school, Pita introduces Creasy to Sister Anna, the headmistress there. The woman goes all religious on him, criticizing his job and asking if he feels God's presence. In response, he surprises her with a Bible verse, showing he's no stranger to such things. When Creasy gets back home, he gets a surprise visit from Lisa, making him put the drink away. She asks how everything's going with Pita. Creasy explains that he's nothing more than a bodyguard and certainly not Pita's friend. The issue lies in the fact that Pita is outgoing while Creasy is not. It all started when Pita was bombarding him with personal questions on their way back home. Just as it's the tradition of all depressed and self-loathing protagonists, Creasy drinks himself to numbness at nights. One fateful evening, after a series of dark and unsettling moments, Creasy reaches his breaking point. He grabs his gun, points it at his head, and pulls the trigger. Yet to his surprise, the gun doesn't go off. When he discusses it with Rayburn later, they come up with all sorts of reasons for the misfire, but ultimately attribute it to fate.
A bullet always tells the truth.
As a result, Creasy decides to keep the bullet that saved his life. On his second day of work, Creasy notices a suspicious car tailing him. He quickly borrows a pencil to write down the license plate number, but he abruptly stops his car to prevent an accident, and the car drives off. Despite Creasy's failed attempt, Pita manages to do what he couldn't. In the next scene, we can see Creasy lending a helping hand to Pita after her swimming training. It seems like Creasy has embraced taking care of Pita as his purpose, his reason to keep going after his failed suicide. He goes on giving her tips on how to win the upcoming swimming match. Don't be afraid of the starting gunshot, is all he asks. Their bond grows stronger, leading to a moment where Creasy is seen smiling during a chat with Pita. Surprised by his own reaction, Creasy realizes that Pita now holds a special place in his heart, beyond just being a wealthy girl he's tasked to protect. The following day is a big one for Pita as she heads to the swimming competition she had been practicing for. Creasy stands by, watching over her like a devoted father. gunshot breaks the silence and Pita jumps off the starting block. As Pita races towards the finish line with determination, Creasy paces alongside the pool, cheering her on. And then, in a thrilling display of sheer willpower, Pita overtakes her competitors and achieves victory. After finishing the race, she jumps out of the pool, resting in Creasy's safe embrace. Afterward, when Pita and Creasy are joined by Rayburn and his wife, Pita hands Creasy a gift, a necklace of St. Jude, the patron saint of lost causes. This shows that Pita notices his struggles and genuinely cares about him. What went down makes Creasy ditch the bottle at night and instead spend his time reading the Bible. The following day, Pita is on her way to get piano lessons, a class she's not too thrilled about. She shows her smarts by telling Creasy how she managed to write down the license plate number of the chasing car when he couldn't. With Pita heading inside, Creasy must wait for her to return, enjoying the moment with the necklace and flowers she gave him just before. Creasy senses trouble as a police car blocks the road, confirming his fear when the car which was tailing them shows up again and parks right by the house Pita went in. He dashes towards the house just as Pita cheerfully bounces out. The poor girl is terrified and dumbfounded. Unexpectedly, the officers start shooting at him. Even though he's lethally wounded, Creasy bravely fights back, taking down the cops and two of the kidnappers. But it's one against many, and he eventually collapses. Pita rushes back to Creasy and finds him losing consciousness on the ground. Without Creasy the bear to protect her, she ends up being kidnapped. Next, we see Rayburn on Creasy's deathbed, calling him out and hoping he'll wake up. Creasy's in the hospital with the cops keeping an eye on him for the murder of two so-called diligent officers. Rayburn then gets an unannounced guest, Miguel Manzano, head of the Federal Investigation Agency and a former Interpol director in Rome. Things get interesting at the press conference with the police chief as a gutsy journalist named Mariana Guerrero questions how the cops could have been present before the kidnapping took place. Manzano backs her up too, suggesting the two officers were corrupt. Later that night, Manzano and Rayburn secretly move Creasy out of the hospital, afraid the police might harm him. Ramos's mansion is swarmed by cops, including Victor Fuentes, the head of the anti-kidnapping squad, waiting for the kidnappers to call. A man known as the Voice calls. He's part of a brotherhood called La Hermandad, and he wants $10 million to release Pita, split into 2 bags. He gives Samuel clear instructions: follow the steps and stash the cash in a car trunk at a specific spot. The kidnappers want Ramos to come solo, but his lawyer talks them into letting him bring a driver. Fuentes is the one who hops in the car with Ramos, taking calls along the way. Ramos takes the last step alone, though. He puts the money in some car's trunk like they said. But just when he thinks it's all good, gunshots ring out. A bunch of thugs ambush the delivery car and kill the kidnappers. The next day rolls around and the cops are still stationed at Ramos's mansion. They get a call from the Voice again. He accuses Ramos of double-crossing him and threatens to kill Pita. Lisa's heartstrings get pulled hard as she begs the Voice sobbingly not to harm her daughter, but he hits her with a cold response.
Now it is too late. I'm really sorry.
Lisa's face twists with pain as she absorbs the weight of the news. Her sadness flips into full-on fury as she lashes out at the cops around her, demanding they leave. When Creasy wakes up, Rayburn fills him in on everything. Later that day, they head over to check out the crime scene. Creasy starts thinking about all that went down, and then he spots something that really ticks him off: the little yellow flower Pita gave him. Next thing you know, Mariana shows up on the scene. She's like a walking encyclopedia and knows everything about Mexico City. Mariana starts talking about El Hermandad, saying it's a brotherhood that protects corrupt cops and government officials. The woman is determined to expose them, so she tells Creasy she'll do everything she can to help him. Creasy gets super determined to seek justice for what was done to Pita no matter what. Although Rayburn initially hesitates to assist him, Creasy's resolve is unshakable, and eventually Rayburn gives in. Creasy heads to Ramos's place and grabs Pita's journal, which has the license plate number in it. He makes a serious promise to Lisa, swearing to take revenge on those responsible for the kidnapping. He gets armed with a bunch of guns, from big ones to small ones, and even gets his hands on a rocket launcher, all thanks to Rayburn's connections. He gives Mariana a call to dig up info on the license plate number Pita noted down. Mariana asks her friend with benefits Manzano to assist. Eventually they find the car, and Creasy wastes no time in confronting the driver, Jorge Gonzalez, who was involved in Pita's kidnapping. Even though Gonzalez says he's a cop, Creasy doesn't care and just tells him to drive, keeping a gun trained on him. Later, Gonzalez is found bound naked to his car's steering wheel. Creasy initiates a calculated torture to get answers about the kidnappers. As the interrogation gets more intense, Gonzalez reveals they only communicate by phone and deliver hostages to a group called the Guardians. When Gonzalez stops cooperating, Creasy brutally chops off a couple of his fingers and a chunk of his ear. Once Gonzalez gives up the Guardian's location, vengeful Creasy shoots the man without a second thought, sending the car on a free-fall journey off a cliff.
Revenge is a meal best served cold.
Creasy tracks down the Guardians at a nightclub. He deceives the guard and gets him close enough to force him to lead the way upstairs. Positioned by the door, he busts in when it opens, firing away as a woman tries to escape. He quickly takes out the guard like swatting a bug, then moves on to interrogate another kidnapper. This one is an easy one since he reveals everything without a sweat. He comes clean about Mr. Head of the Kidnapping Committee, Fuentes. He was the one who actually hijacked the ransom money. Once Creasy gets the information he needs, he coldly takes the man out. Creasy soon discovers that the Guardians have taken another girl, triggering painful memories of Pita. He rescues her and hands Mariana the kidnapper's credit card, asking her to trace the money trail. Before leaving, Creasy sets the nightclub on fire, watching as it burns to the ground. Nothing can stop Mexico City's people from chanting as they bounce and leap without a care in the world. Now it's time to deal with Fuentes. Creasy sets up a plan to capture him alive. He positions himself in a strategic house, getting his shoulder missile launcher ready. While prepping, the old couple living there ask Creasy to forgive them, but Creasy's got a sharp comeback.
Forgiveness is between them and God. It's my job to arrange the meeting.
When Fuentes and his bodyguards show up, Creasy sends a missile their way. It zooms and blows up the bodyguards in a huge blast. Emerging from the flames, Creasy swiftly takes out the remaining bodyguards and abducts Fuentes. Next thing you know, Creasy has Fuentes tied up to his car. Threatening Fuentes with a bomb he planted in his rectum, Creasy gives him 5 minutes to come clean. Creasy's now surprised by the next revelation. Fuentes is the head of the La Hermandad and hijacked the ransom money, only to find that 3/4 of it was worthless paper. Turns out the family lawyer took the rest. Without batting an eye, Creasy heads to the lawyer's place, calm and collected, leaving Fuentes to blow up. When Creasy gets to Calfus's place, he finds him floating in his pool, lifeless. Turns out the real brain behind everything is Samuel Ramos. Creasy pieces it together by examining banking papers from Calfus's home with Mariana's help. Back at the Ramoses' mansion, Creasy confronts him about everything. Lisa's shocked and demands answers, pushing Ramos to confess. Here we learn that the insurance money was actually split between Calfus and Ramos. Seeing Ramos's financial mess, Calfus talked him into staging a phony kidnapping in order to make some money from the insurance company, promising to release Pita after a couple days. But with Fuentes double-crossing the kidnappers, their plan ran into an issue. In a fit of anger, Ramos also admits to killing Calfus to avenge his daughter's death. Creasy remains composed but disappointed as Lisa urges him to take out Samuel for what he did to Pita. Creasy unloads his gun, leaving one bullet, the same one that saved him.
Bullet always tells the truth.
He hands Samuel the gun and walks away while the gunshot echoes through the air and Samuel falls lifeless. Manzano and Mariana figure out where the Voice's wife lives by checking the bank account used to send money to the card Creasy handed over earlier. We see Manzano's men infiltrated the house and bugged it under the pretext of giving cholera shots. In such way, they managed to swipe a photo of the Voice and get it published in the newspapers. After finding out where the house is located, Creasy sets out for one final mission to kill the Voice. But as he enters, he's unexpectedly shot. He chases down the shooter and catches him, only to find out that it's the Voice's brother. Through an interrogation with the wife, Creasy learns that the Voice's real name is Daniel. Later, Creasy sends a strong message by shooting Daniel's brother in the hand while talking to him on the phone, that he's not here for the money. Meanwhile, all of this is being surveyed by Miguel's men. Now, with Daniel's whole family in danger, he has no choice but to surrender. Then comes the big reveal. Pita is still alive. Daniel proves it by mentioning her bear's name, leaving Creasy speechless and shaken. Daniel then offers a trade, Pita's life in exchange for his brother's and Creasy's, and Creasy agrees with no second thought. He meets Lisa at the location, having informed her earlier. Creasy gives her the instructions. Let him go only when you have Pita. If things go wrong, don't hesitate to shoot, and don't wait for me. Then we see Creasy making his way towards his fate. Armed men are waiting on the other side of a bridge. Having lost so much blood already, his movements are sluggish. From the kidnapper's car, a girl jumps out. Relief floods Creasy as Pita calls out his name and runs to him. She finds comfort in his embrace. He hands her the pink journal and guides her back to her mother. While Pita reunites with her mom, Creasy is escorted away, casting one final glance at Pita. Tearful in the car, he finally finds peace, clutching the necklace she gave him. That's a lot for a guy with a death wish. Daniel now has both Creasy's body and his brother, but it's not a win for him. Shortly after he gets killed by Manzano during the arrest. The story ends with prompting for one wish, a wish that we all had a Creasy bear to bear with us. And that's all for today's video. Hope you found the recap interesting. Thanks for watching and catch you in the next one.